Welcome to my channel.
As we are in another part of the palace in a private room, we see the Empress Dowager having some tea. She comments to her advisor, "So, she's the daughter of House Snow. She seems to be staying at Tulip Palace." Eagler, the advisor, confirms saying, "Yes, Your Majesty. My informants notified me that it appears that she is risking her life to become Empress to protect her family." The Empress Dowager said aloud, "In the end, I couldn't sway Count Jaden Snow. I wonder, what will his daughter be like?" At the Owens estate, we meet Franklin Owen, Eleanor's fiancé. We see him eating dinner at the table. "You're eating too quickly, my lord," said another voice. Franklin retorted, "Shut up and just eat your food." The voice came from Eleanor's friend, Persephone Osborne. Franklin, angry with himself, continued to say, "Curse it. I knew it. I knew this would fail. I should have opposed this domain war from the start." Persephone thought to herself, "Should have opposed? You were the one leading the charge to betray House Snow." Flashback to a few days before. Persephone spoke to Franklin in his chambers. She said, "My lord, you're still awake. You should get some rest, since you're leaving early tomorrow." Franklin continued to answer, "I can't sleep because tomorrow's such an important day." Persephone asked Franklin, "Why are you so invested in this domain war when you love Eleanor, my lord? If she learns of your betrayal, she'll be heartbroken." Franklin continued to say that way. "She'll be completely isolated and alone. Ellie is far too strong for a woman, assertive and independent. I love her, but not that part about her. When House Snow falls, there will be no one left by her side. Then, and only then, will Ellie finally submit to me and become obedient." Persephone stared silently. Back to the present. Franklin slammed his fist to the table. "Curse it! Why did that emperor have to meddle in northern affairs? Who does he think he is, ordering us to end the domain war? Eleanor, if only the domain war had succeeded." Franklin clenched his teeth. Persephone thought to herself, "No, even if it had succeeded, Eleanor never would have submitted to you. That's the kind of woman she is. But I, in the other hand, I have loved you for so long, can submit to you and only you, Franklin. A man who has never loved me, not even for a single moment." Here we are back at Tulip Palace. We see Eleanor opening the shades to take a look outside. Eleanor begins to think to herself, the capital is bustling with preparations for the New Year's festival, yet it's as silent as a cemetery in here. So this is my position in the imperial palace. A woman of the Tulip Palace cared for by no one. Eleanor pulled the curtain and closed the window. She went towards the closet. Eleanor continued to think to herself, "It doesn't matter. I'll make sure that changes soon enough. The time for mourning is over. I must think of those who have survived, myself included." As the door creaked open, she began to walk out. Now it is time to meet the emperor, and now we are transported to an interrogatory. We see resistances and hustling coming from a cell. The emperor continues to glare at the prisoner and continues to say, "How amusing. Flashback to the night before." We see someone breaking into the emperor's room at the middle of the night with a dagger in hand, ready to make the decisive blow while the emperor is asleep. Little did the intruder know that the emperor was very much awake and ready to destroy every ounce of the intruder's body. The emperor grabbed the intruder's hand and tightened his grip and stared intently at the intruder. Back to the present, the emperor commented to the prisoner while he grabbed the prisoner's face, "Do they think they'll catch me off guard one of these days? and actually succeed in killing me? What do you think? The prisoner stared back at the flower, motionless. The emperor thought to himself, he's under a strong enchantment spell. Suddenly, the prisoner's body fell. We see Oscar call out to His Majesty and continues to inform, Lady Eleanor Snow requests an audience with you. The emperor looked back with a smile. Yes, I figured it's about time she makes a move, if she plans to make use of me. He looked around and saw all the conditions of the cell. He grinned. Finally, he said, Bring her here. You could hear her footsteps. All of a sudden, the door opened. Eleanor saw the emperor and continued to call out, Your Majesty. The emperor answered back, As you can see, I've been rather busy. This had better be important. Eleanor requested, May I come closer, Your Majesty? The emperor began to think. Even after being summoned to a place like this, her expression doesn't change in the slightest. The emperor told Eleanor, Very well, if you can manage to. Eleanor told the emperor, I feel the presence of a powerful magic. She declared it's an enchantment spell. The emperor said, You know your spells. You said you could use a bit of magic, but it seems your skill is greater than I thought. Eleanor answered, You flatter me, Your Majesty. The emperor continued to comment, I prefer not to keep a powerful mage at my side, since ill never know when or how they might deceive me. Eleanor smiled back and confidently said, I would never hide anything from Your Majesty. I'm not confident in deceiving someone stronger than me. The emperor could only look at Eleanor in silence with a slight smile. The emperor asked, So, what is it you have to say? Eleanor looked intently at the emperor and continued, As you know, Your Majesty, the New Year's festival will soon be held. Aren't you curious what might happen in the middle of such a grand and joyous occasion? The emperor asked, So, you're saying something will take place during the New Year's festival? Eleanor glanced away and changed the subject quickly by asking, Did this man try to assassinate Your Majesty and fail? The emperor began to answer, Yes, unfortunately. Eleanor continued, The imperial palace always seems to be crawling with people after Your Majesty's life. That's why you always leave for the battlefield, isn't it? And right now, you cannot leave the palace because there is no empress. The emperor acknowledged Eleanor. That's correct. If I as emperor am absent when the empress throne is vacant, the imperial palace will be thrown into chaos. Eleanor continued to say, If such a disaster, which is strike on the New Year's festival during Your Majesty reign, the people will deem you unfit as ruler. The emperor thought to himself, She has a point. Well, sounds like you have an idea what kind of tragedy might take place. Eleanor stated, There hasn't been a large rift opening for quite some time now. The emperor continued to think, A rift, huh? Is a passage torn through space and time by the risks to drag monsters into this land. To execute a rift, countless human sacrifices are required. The emperor began to say, in other words, You believe they'll use the crowd gathered at the New Year's festival as sacrifices in order to create a rift. Eleanor answered, Yes, Your Majesty. While I hope nothing happens, if something does, I will stop it. You, exclaimed the emperor. You plan on stopping the monsters? Eleanor began to explain. If I do, please believe that House Snow has never, not for a single moment, wavered in our loyalty to you. The emperor began to think, she'll face the monsters herself? So, she's willing to risk her life just to earn my trust, the emperor said. It seems you value your family more than yourself. Eleanor was quick to answer, "That is because they're family." The emperor began to chuckle. "Family, huh? To have someone you'd risk your life to protect." Then for thought to himself again, "How envious I am of you," Eleanor continued. "If I become empress, I will risk my life to protect your majesty as well." The emperor looked at Eleanor puzzled. Eleanor continues to say, "Because we'll be family too." This left the emperor thinking. Eleanor thought to herself, "He's still considering my words. Perhaps he still doesn't trust me." Momentarily, Eleanor glanced at the prisoner. Eleanor began to think, "He's still alive after all this time. Such tenacious vitality." The prisoner began to huff and huff. He was exhausted. Eleanor continued to think, "Perhaps I could make good use of him." Suddenly, the emperor begins to answer, "If you're willing to risk your life to protect me, are you able to break this man's enchantment spell?" Eleanor said. "That might be possible, as long as he's able to survive it." The emperor continued to say, "Very well. If you can break the enchantment spell and uncover who's behind this attempt, I'll permit you to keep this man at your side." Eleanor exclaimed, "How did you know that's what I wanted?" The emperor was clear to say, "From the moment you walked in, you've been looking at him with greedy eyes." "Did I truly look that way?" asked Eleanor. The emperor continued to say with a smile, "I almost felt jealous." Eleanor stood silent for a moment. Eleanor begins to clarify, "I need someone I can trust in the palace." The emperor noted, "Remember, he was once an agent of the enemy, and if you fail to break the enchantment, he might turn his blade on you." Eleanor began to say confidently, "Do you think I die to a blade like that?" "Ha," said the emperor. "You seem confident," Eleanor replied. "I'm simply determined to stay alive since my future husband won't protect me." The emperor looked puzzled and continued to say, My. And why do you want to marry such a cold-hearted man?" Eleanor was firm with her answer, "Because I seek power. There are those I wish to strike down with my own blade." She clenched her dress. The emperor noted once again, "I suppose I should hope that blade never turns on me." The Eleanor was quick to answer, "My blade will never, under any circumstances, be turned against my family." The emperor could only observe.